Hey guys. Come in a little closer and let the day slide off you, like you're taking off a jacket that's been heavy for no reason. Lower the screen brightness just enough to stop your eyes from arguing with you. Let your shoulders drop. Let your tongue rest. Tonight, you're not here to fix the universe, optimize your habits, or prove you're handling everything. Fine. You're here to drift into a place so old and steady that your stress starts to feel slightly embarrassing. In a good way. Now picture this in present tense, like it's happening right now because it is. Dawn unfurls at the edge of ancient Damascus, and the air holds that cool, rinsed quality that only exists before the sun decides it owns the world. Mist sits low near the riverbanks, softening the outlines of reeds and stone, turning everything into gentle shapes. You taste damp earth and crushed leaves on your breath. Somewhere ahead, behind pale walls that have been holding the night's coolness in their bones, the city is waking slowly, quietly, without the frantic, modern urge to announce itself. And listen, you probably won't survive this if you insist on staying tense. If you keep clenching your thoughts like a fist around an invisible steering wheel. Damascus is the kind of place that doesn't fight you. It outlasts you. It just keeps offering water, shade, and perfume until your nervous system gets tired of being dramatic. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and let me know how your day has really been, your worries, your exhaustion, or even a tiny joy that made you smile. I'm here to truly listen and offer the most sincere, heartfelt advice I can. Now turn off the lights. Take a deep, slow breath, let your tiredness melt away, and gently close your eyes. Let's drift together into tonight's dreamlike lands. And tomorrow morning, if you still remember, send me a message and tell me what you dreamed. You step forward, and the road under your feet is hard-packed and pale, still cool from night. The Barada is nearby, though you don't need to name it yet. And you hear it before you see it, that steady, layered sound of water moving the way it's meant to move. Not loud, not showy, just sure. The kind of certainty your body trusts instantly, even if your mind is still suspicious. A gate opening sits ahead, not as a dramatic mouth in the wall, but as a decision cut into stone. You pass through, and the air changes. The city holds its atmosphere differently inside, cooler in the shade, warmer in sun slants, and threaded with scent like an unseen tapestry. Jasmine reaches you faintly at first, barely a hint, then returns again a few steps later, more confident, as if it's testing whether you're paying attention. The lane bends gently, then bends again. Damascus refuses to be consumed in a straight line. Light falls in angled slices from above, catching dust in the air and turning it into shimmering threads. Wooden lattices filter sun into patterns that move slowly across the ground, making time visible in quiet increments. Even the stone feels considered, smooth in places where countless hands have passed, rough in others where age has been left alone to speak. You brush your fingertips along a wall and feel chalky dryness, warmed by yesterday's sun and cooled by last night's dark. The texture grounds you. It's not abstract here. Nothing is. Everything has weight and temperature and a history of being touched. A jasmine vine spills over a ledge like it's politely ignoring architecture. Blossoms hang close, small white stars with soft edges, glowing faintly in low morning light. The scent doesn't shout. It persists. It keeps appearing until your body stops pretending it's too busy to notice. The soundscape layers itself as you go deeper. Outside the walls, dawn is open, birds, wind, river. Inside, it becomes braided, sandals whispering on stone, a distant clink of metal, the faint creak of wood, and somewhere far ahead, the suggestion of work warming up, like a heartbeat that hasn't fully decided to speak yet. You hear water too, not just the river's open movement, but a thinner sound, a quick, secret run beneath stone slabs. A channel. Hidden, guided, protected. You don't see it at first, but you recognize the pattern. Water here isn't decoration. It's infrastructure with a soul. It's divided and delivered and watched, not because anyone is romantic about it, but because without it, the city's softness collapses into heat. A doorway on your left sits half open, plain from the street, and you catch a glimpse inside, tiles and shadow, a bowl of water catching a trembling reflection of sky, leaves stirring in cooler air. A courtyard, private, engineered for shade and breath. The city keeps its gentleness behind unassuming entrances, like it doesn't care if strangers miss it. It's built for the people who live here, and for travelers quiet enough to be guided in. You keep walking because you're not here to force anything. You're here to follow. Your shoulders relax a fraction at a time, without permission, like your body recognizes a place designed to keep you from burning out. You notice small acts of mourning, a figure sweeping a threshold with slow strokes, someone carrying a clay jar balanced with calm skill, a door being opened just wide enough to let air move but not wide enough to invite noise. No one stops to stare at you. No one turns you into entertainment. Glances land, register, move on. You're simply another person passing through the city's morning, and that anonymity feels like a gift. Your nervous system doesn't have to perform. It just gets to exist. Then the breeze shifts, and you catch it, smoke, faint and clean, like wood burned carefully. Under it, iron, bright, thin, unmistakable. Not harsh, not violent, just the honest mineral scent of tools warmed by use. Somewhere deeper within, fire is being prepared, contained, fed in patience. You don't go chasing it yet. Damascus is still introducing itself, and it does that with quiet cues, not announcements. You reach a small widening in the lane where the sky opens slightly, and ahead you see a softer band of green beyond stone, river orchards waiting like a cool invitation. The city's day will eventually pull you toward markets and metal and heat, but for now, you stand in that threshold space and let the morning settle around you like a cloak. You breathe in jasmine and damp stone. You breathe out something heavy you didn't realize you were carrying. And you take the next step, letting Damascus guide you toward its first religion, water. You don't rush toward the city's louder heart yet. You let the softer pulse lead you first. The green hint you saw between stone edges, the cooling breath that keeps slipping through cracks like the city is quietly sharing its water with you. Your feet find a path that angles toward the river, and the air loosens again, less enclosed, more leaf and mud than stone and smoke. The Barada is not a grand, theatrical river in this moment. It doesn't perform. It just does its job with the calm stubbornness of something that knows it's essential. The surface carries dawn light in thin, trembling strips, and the banks hold reeds and low grasses that bow slightly as if they're used to listening. The sound is constant, small, layered, never fully silent. Water against stones, water against roots, water splitting into channels you can't yet see. You follow that sound and begin to notice how the city's edge dissolves into cultivated life. Orchards start almost casually, as if someone said, "Sure, why not grow paradise right here?" and then actually followed through for generations. Trees line up in disciplined rows, but there's nothing sterile about them. Their branches lean and overlap, making a roof of leaves that catches sunlight and filters it into a soft, greenish glow. Fruit hangs at different stages of readiness, some firm and pale, some blushing toward ripeness, like the orchard is refusing to move at a single speed just to make your brain feel tidy. Underfoot, the ground changes. It's darker and softer, packed with years of fallen leaves and river-fed moisture. You step carefully because the earth here has that slight give, like it's alive, like it remembers water. A narrow channel runs alongside the path, shallow but quick, carrying a thin ribbon of river into the orchard's deeper veins. It's so narrow you could step over it, and yet everything around it depends on it. This is where you start understanding the city's first religion, the one nobody needs to preach: water. The irrigation channels are everywhere once your eyes tune in. Some are open, guiding water along the edges of paths. Others slip beneath stone slabs and reappear farther on like a magic trick that's actually just careful engineering. Little gates, simple, clever, often wooden, can divert flow with a small adjustment. A slight tilt, a block placed here instead of there, and suddenly one row of trees drinks while another waits its turn. It's intimate control over something powerful, like holding a nervous animal steady by knowing exactly where to place your hand. You pass a low structure where clay jars are stacked in partial shade. They're not decorative, they're practical, cooling vessels, storage, silent partners in a system designed to keep life going through heat. Nearby, a basin catches overflow from a channel and feeds a patch of herbs that looks impossibly lush. The scent changes as you walk: green bitterness, citrus peel, damp bark, and always, weaving through it like a familiar thought, the jasmine from somewhere farther back in the city. People move through the orchard with the easy competence of those who belong to their work. You see hands checking branches, lifting leaves, testing firmness with fingertips that don't bruise. You see someone adjusting a small water gate, watching the flow the way you might watch a sleeping child's breathing, attentive, gentle, absolutely serious. No one speaks to you, and still you don't feel excluded. The orchard teaches without announcing itself. It lets you learn by noticing. A breeze passes, and leaves ripple in a wave. The sound is soft, like cloth shifting. Sunlight breaks through in scattered coins that land on your arms and face. It's warmer now, but the orchard holds the heat at bay with shade and moisture and the steady evaporative hush of living plants. You can feel why people would fight over water here without needing anyone to explain. It's not abstract. It's comfort. It's food. It's the difference between a city that thrives and a city that merely survives. You stop beside one of the channels and crouch, watching the water move. It isn't perfectly clear. It carries fine sediment, tiny floating bits of leaf and silt, the honest mess of a real river. You scoop a little in your hands and let it run between your fingers. It's cooler than you expect, and for a second your skin believes it's early spring even though the light is already leaning towards summer's intensity. The water feels like a small mercy you didn't know you could ask for. And because your brain is your brain, it tries to do the modern thing. It starts comparing. It wants to measure. It wants to categorize the system into efficient or inefficient, innovative or primitive. You almost feel the urge to turn it into a lesson you can brag about later. But the orchard doesn't care. The orchard doesn't need your approval. It just keeps feeding the city. You walk again deeper, and the path narrows where trees press in. A cluster of flowering plants grows near a channel bend, and bees hover, busy and indifferent to your existence. You watch them for a moment, their tiny bodies disappearing into blossoms and re-emerging dusted with pollen like they've been rolling in gold. There's something soothing about their certainty. They don't question their purpose. They don't doom scroll. They just do. Farther along, you notice something like a small shrine of practicality, stones arranged carefully to prevent a channel from eroding the bank, reeds tied together to guide the flow, a strip of woven mat laid down where feet have worn a muddy patch slick. It's maintenance, the quiet kind. It's the kind of labor that never gets a song written about it, and yet it's the reason anything beautiful can last. The city's wall is no longer a strict boundary behind you. From here, Damascus feels like it extends into the orchard, as if the gardens are part of its lungs. You can sense how people might step out here in the hottest part of day, not for leisure exactly, but for sanity. To stand under leaves, to hear water, to remember that life can be coaxed and guided rather than constantly forced. A faint metallic note returns on the breeze, subtle, distant, but present. Smoke too, thin threads rising somewhere deeper inside. The forges are waking. Not yet roaring, but warming like an animal stretching. You feel the pull of that heat and craft, the promise of patterned steel and human skill. But you also feel the orchard's argument. Before you go into fire, understand the water that makes fire possible. Before you watch steel become a blade, see how fruit becomes breakfast, how shade becomes endurance, how a river becomes a city's daily permission to exist. You walk along the channel until it merges into another, then another, a braided system that mirrors the river's own branching logic. At a wider junction, water splits three ways, each stream given a different task. You can almost imagine the invisible map in someone's mind. Who gets flown now? Who later? How much? How long? Not guesswork. Not luck. A practiced stewardship carried in bodies and routines. You stand there, listening. The water doesn't roar. It murmurs. It repeats itself gently, like it's trying to lull you into cooperation. And in a way it is. Your breath matches it. Your thoughts slow to its pace. For the first time in what feels like forever, you're not trying to outrun your own fatigue. You're simply letting the river teach you how to keep going without panicking. When you finally turn back toward the city's interior, you bring the orchard's coolness with you like a hidden pocket of shade. You know you'll need it. The air ahead will grow tighter, hotter, louder. There will be metal and heat and work. But now you understand something fundamental. Damascus is not just walls and markets and craft. It's water, carefully persuaded into channels. It's green life defended against dry air. It's a city that survives because it learned to treat a river not as scenery, but as a partner. You step back from the orchard's braided channels and let the city draw you inward again, as if the streets are gently taking your hand. The air shifts almost immediately, less open leaf space, more stone shadow, and yet you still carry that river coolness in your skin, like you tucked it into your sleeves for later. You'll be grateful for it, Because the city's interior holds warmth the way a kiln holds heat, patiently, persistently, with no concern for your comfort schedule. The lane narrows, then narrows again, doing that Damascus thing where every turn feels intentional. Not confusing, exactly, more like the city is refusing to be consumed at a glance. Walls rise on both sides, pale stone broken by darker door frames, occasional wooden lattices, and the soft spill of vines that never quite agree to behave. Light comes in angled slices now, a slow choreography of brightness and shadow that moves across the ground as the sun climbs. You begin to notice how the city protects itself from the day. Not with brute force, but with design that feels almost tender. Doors sit back from the street, creating small pockets of shade before you even cross a threshold. Overhangs soften the glare. Narrowness itself becomes a tool. Less sky overhead means less heat pressing down. The whole place is built like someone understood, very early, that survival can be beautiful. A figure appears ahead, quiet, purposeful, and without speaking they make a small gesture that reads like an invitation. It isn't theatrical. No arms flung wide. Just a subtle tilt of the head toward a doorway that looks plain from the street. Heavy wood, simple metalwork, the kind of entrance you might ignore if you were scanning for highlights. Which is exactly why you feel the urge to ignore it, and exactly why you shouldn't. Your modern brain loves spectacle. Damascus loves secrets. You step through. The moment you cross the threshold, the temperature drops. Not dramatically, not like a cold room, just enough for your body to sigh in relief before your mind catches up. The sound changes too. Street noise falls away as if it's been folded and put into a drawer. In its place, water, quiet and constant, and the softest rustle of leaves. You're in a courtyard. It opens upward like a private sky, framed by walls that rise around you with calm authority. The ground is tiled, patterns that aren't trying to shout, just repeating themselves with steady confidence. There's a fountain at the center, modest in size, endlessly important in effect. Water spills in a gentle loop, catching light and turning it into a trembling shimmer that plays across nearby surfaces. If you stand still long enough, you can feel the courtyard breathing, cool air settling low, warm air drifting up, water keeping the whole space from drying out into harshness. Jasmine lives here the way it seems to live everywhere, climbing, spilling, threading itself along ledges and trellises. Blossoms sit close to your face, small white stars that look delicate, and yet somehow outlast seasons, outlast moods, outlast you. The scent is thicker in this enclosed space, sweet but not cloying, like it knows the difference between comfort and suffocation. Your shoulders drop another millimeter. You didn't ask them to. They just do it, as if your body recognizes the logic of shade and water and privacy. And privacy, yes, that's the next thing you feel. Not isolation. Privacy. The sense that the world can exist outside these walls without climbing into your chest. From the street, you would never guess this space is here. That's the point. Damascus doesn't put its softness on display. It keeps it inside, for people who live here, for guests who are guided in, for tired travelers who look like they've been carrying too much noise. You look up and see windows screened with carved wood, latticework that filters light into pattern fragments. Sunbeams land as delicate grids on the tiled floor, shifting slowly as time moves. The geometry is everywhere, straight lines, repeating shapes, symmetry that calms rather than confines. Even the plants seem arranged with a quiet sense of order, pots placed where shade falls just right, vines trained along beams, leaves encouraged to soften corners. Someone moves through the space, not hurried, and you watch how they treat the courtyard like a living room without walls. They adjust the pot's position slightly. They check the fountain's flow with a quick glance. Their hands understand maintenance the way the orchard hands understood irrigation, constant, patient, uncelebrated it. The courtyard stays beautiful because someone keeps it that way, daily, in small acts that never trend online. You walk along the edge where the tiles meet a strip of stone, and you notice how the sound of your footsteps changes, sharp on tile, muted on stone, almost swallowed by the damp coolness near the fountain. The water's murmur threads through everything, as steady as the river but quieter, domesticated into a lullaby. You remember how the Barada split into channels with little gates, and you realize the courtyard is another channel, water persuaded into a smaller, gentler form, turned into comfort rather than crops. Your guide, still silent, leads you toward an archway that opens into an interior room. The threshold is framed with stonework that catches the light along its edges. Inside, it's dimmer, cooler. The walls are plastered smooth, pale surfaces that make the space feel wider. Along one section, tilework climbs in bands, blues and greens repeating like a promise, coolness, coolness, coolness. You can almost feel the craftsman who placed each piece, who understood that pattern isn't just decoration, it's a way of soothing the mind. Repetition tells your nervous system, nothing is attacking you right now. You can unclench. You move slowly because everything here rewards slowness. If you rush, you'll miss the way light bounces off water onto the ceiling in faint ripples. You'll miss the tiny chips and tile edges that prove this isn't new, isn't a showroom, isn't pretending to be untouched by time. You'll miss the soft, worn curve in a stone step where countless feet have passed, each one carrying its own private fatigue, each one grateful for a cool courtyard and a closed door. Outside, you hear distant city sounds returning faintly. Somewhere a hammer taps, somewhere a cartwheel creaks, somewhere the day is beginning to ask more of people. But inside this courtyard, the demands feel buffered, filtered through shade and geometry. It's like the city is saying, quietly, yes, life is hard. So we built a pocket where it's easier to breathe. You linger near the fountain and watch a leaf drift into the water's edge, caught in the small circular current, spinning lazily as if it has nowhere urgent to be. You envy it in a way that's almost embarrassing. But you also take the hint. You let your thoughts drift a little. You let your breathing match the fountain's rhythm. You don't have to solve anything yet. You don't have to chase the forges yet. Damascus is still introducing itself, not with speeches, but with spaces that gently rearrange your body into peace. When you step back toward the street, the heat meets you again, but it doesn't hit as hard, because you've learned the city's secret. Softness is always nearby, hidden behind an unassuming door, waiting for you to remember that you're allowed to step inside. You step out of the courtyard's cool pocket, and the street feels louder, not because it suddenly shouts, but because your senses have been rinsed clean. Sunlight is higher now, pressing warmth onto stone, and your skin remembers the fountain's chill with a small, stubborn gratitude. The lane funnels you forward, then releases you into a wider passage where movement gathers the way water gathers at a bend. The market begins without a sign. It simply happens. One moment you're between quiet walls. The next, the air thickens with layered smells: ground cumin, dried citrus peel, smoke from cooking fires, and something sweet and resinous that clings to you like a soft ambush. Overhead, beams and woven shade screens break the sun into calm stripes so your eyes don't have to fight the day. You drift into the flow as if you've been poured there. People move around you with practiced ease, bodies angled, steps timed, hands carrying, weighing, sorting. No one bumps you, and it's not because they're timid. It's because the whole place runs on an unspoken choreography, the same quiet intelligence you saw in irrigation gates, translated into footsteps. The current splits at junctions and reunites, swallowing narrow alleys, spilling into small squares, then pulling back again into shaded corridors. If you listen, you hear the market's real music, the ring of metal on metal, the soft drag of fabric being unrolled, the patter of sandals, the hush of fingers counting coins. Somewhere deeper, a heavier hammer rhythm keeps time like a distant heartbeat, firework, forge work, still not the center of your path, but present enough to tug at you like a thread. Spices rise in tidy cones: ochre, rust, gold, deep brown, colors that make the world look briefly more edible. A breeze lifts a faint cloud and it settles on your tongue, bitter and warm, waking you without aggression. You almost smile at the thought of your modern energy hacks, when a single breath here does the job with zero branding. Rose petals sit beside green herbs. Strings of garlic hang like small protective charms. Blocks of olive oil soap stack in neat towers, plain until you notice subtle stamps pressed into their surfaces. Quiet signatures that don't need loud ink. Your instincts want to capture everything to keep it, but the market refuses to be flattened into a souvenir. It lives in motion, in scents that change the second you turn your head. Textiles soften the world. Silk glimmers in shade, catching light the way the courtyard water did, shimmering, shifting, refusing to stay the same color for more than a heartbeat. Wool hangs heavier, matte and comforting. You brush a folded edge and feel the dense patience of it, spun, dyed, woven, carried. Each piece holds the memory of repetition, the kind that turns a day's work into something that can outlast a season. Then the smell changes. Leather, warm and slightly sharp. Sandals and belts hang in orderly rows, their edges smooth from careful cutting. Copper bowls catch stray light and throw it back in warm flashes that make the corridor feel briefly sunlit. A worker polishes a tray in slow circles, and the motion is almost hypnotic, an endless orbit, like the leaf you watch spinning in the fountain's current. Repetition isn't boredom here, it's how beauty stays alive. The architecture holds the market like cupped hands. Stone arches appear at intervals, curving overhead and turning corridors into rooms without doors. Some passages are high and airy, others are low and intimate, forcing you to slow down and watch where you place your feet. The city isn't trying to shove you through commerce. It's designed to keep you wandering, to let your attention settle. At a corner, sunlight lands on a mound of dates, turning them glossy. Nuts spill in heaps, almonds, pistachios, small stored promises of energy. You remember the orchard's branches and the cool channels feeding them, and you see the same story here, transformed into sweetness you can carry in a palm. Water becomes fruit, fruit becomes trade, trade becomes daily breathing. A faint jasmine note returns as you pass an archway where vines creep along a hidden courtyard wall. It's like the city keeps slipping you reminders. Yes, there is shade. Yes, there is water. Yes, there is softness behind all this movement. Your shoulders don't rise the way they usually do in crowds. The patterned screens, the arches, the steady rhythms, everything buffers you from panic. The market leans toward metalwork. The air carries a brighter tang, charcoal smoke, heated iron, the clean bite of freshly worked metal. Tools hang on walls like an organized constellation: tongs, hammers, chisels. Ordinary blades glint, knives for kitchens and fields, quietly foreshadowing the finer steel you'll meet later. You don't linger long, but you let the sound settle into you. Tap, tap, scrape, small honest noises of making. You keep moving, because that's what the market teaches. Don't cling, flow. Let each stall be a moment, not a possession. Let your attention be the currency you spend. By the time you reach another junction where corridors branch like river channels, you feel the city's logic in your bones. Everything connects: water to orchards, orchards to food, food to markets, markets to craft, craft to fire. Somewhere ahead, the heavier hammer rhythm grows a shade clearer, like a door in the distance being opened. The market's current nudges you that way, gently. You let it. You let yourself be guided by scent and sound and shade, and for once you're not steering. It turns out to be oddly restful. The market's shaded corridors thin out almost without warning, like a braid coming loose. The smells of spice and soap soften behind you, replaced by something sharper and more elemental: smoke that's been doing honest work, not just scenting the air. Metal warmed and cooled and warmed again. Charcoal dust settling in the folds of everything. The hammer rhythm that was distant before now feels close enough to tap against your ribs. You follow it, because of course you do. Curiosity is basically your most consistent personality trait, even when you're exhausted. Especially when you're exhausted. Your mind likes a sound it can trust, steady, repetitive, real. And here, the city's heartbeat is not hidden behind shutters and fountains. It's out in the open, contained but not embarrassed. The lane tightens again, and the shade deepens, not from screens this time but from roofed workshops and overhangs built to tame heat and glare. You catch glimpses through open doorways, dark interiors with bright cores, like caves that keep a little sun trapped inside. The air grows warmer as you approach, and it's a different kind of warmth than daylight. Sun heat presses from above, forge heat rises from below and blooms outward, a living thing that breathes. You reach the steel district, and your senses rearrange themselves. Sound comes first, metal on metal, a clean ringing strike that lands and fades, then lands again. Bellows sigh, not dramatically, but steadily, like a huge animal sleeping in the back of each workshop. There's the scrape of tongs on stone, the soft hiss when hot metal meets damp air, the dull thud of something heavy being set down with care. Then smell: charcoal, dry and earthy, iron bright and thin, a hint of oil, and underneath it all, the faint mineral note of ash. It's not unpleasant. It's intense, yes, but honest. Your body reads it as work happening, and some tired part of you relaxes because at least this is straightforward. No pretending. No performance. Just making. A workshop doorway frames a scene like a living painting. Inside, a hearth glows in a contained rectangle, coals banked and fed, their colors shifting from deep red to orange-white at the core. A worker leans in and adjusts something with a long tool, and sparks jump briefly, tiny bright insects that die midair. You watch, Not because you're craving danger, but because the sight is oddly calming. Fire doing exactly what fire does, contained by skill and habit. You step closer and feel heat brush your face, then retreat as you shift position. The city has trained its spaces to handle this. Thick walls, narrow openings, roofed work areas that funnel smoke out and keep chaos from spilling into the street. Even here, among flame and iron, Damascus is still designing for balance. Hands move inside the workshop with a kind of quiet certainty. They are not hurried. They are not sloppy. They do small actions that matter, turning a piece at the right moment, checking color the way orchard hands checked fruit, making tiny adjustments that decide whether a day's labor becomes something strong or something wasted. You realize, in a slow dawning way, that the city's crafts share the same core habit: attention. A blade form rests on a block, not yet a weapon, more like a promise. Beside it, ordinary tools hang in tidy order, their surfaces worn smooth where palms have held them thousands of times. This is not romantic chaos. This is a place of routines. The romance, if you want to call it that, lives in repetition, the steady return to the same motions until the body knows them better than the mind. You move along the row of workshops, letting the rhythm guide you. In one space, a shallow trough sits near the hearth, the surface of water inside trembling from nearby impacts. The sight jolts a quiet memory, river channels splitting with calm purpose, courtyard fountains murmuring under jasmine. Even here, fire keeps a relationship with water. It needs it, respects it, fears it a little. The city's logic circles back on itself, always. You see metal being drawn out, heated, then placed on an anvil, then struck. Each strike lands with intent. The sound is sharp at first, then duller as the metal changes. You can almost feel the transformation in your teeth. It's physical. It's unavoidable. The piece is turned, struck again, turned again, and slowly it becomes something longer, flatter, more precise. Not through one dramatic moment, but through 1,000 small ones. And yes, your modern brain tries to interrupt with its usual nonsense. What's the process? What's the technique? Can I summarize it into a neat bullet list? You can feel the urge to pin it down, to package it, to make it useful. But the workshop doesn't care about your productivity fantasies. It's doing something older than your need to explain yourself. It's shaping matter. A faint sweetness slips in on the edge of the heat, jasmine again, stubborn as ever, as if the city refuses to let you forget softness even when you're standing near flame. Somewhere above, a vine has found a crack in the wall and decided this was a perfectly reasonable place to live. It is, in its own way, a tiny act of rebellion, beauty insisting on coexisting with industry. You notice the surfaces here, stone darkened by smoke, wooden beams polished by time, metal tools catching stray light. Everything is textured. Everything shows use. There's a comfort in that too. Nothing in this district pretends to be untouched. It's all been handled, repaired, maintained. Like a person who's lived through a lot and didn't bother to hide it. A pair of tongs lifts a glowing piece from the coals. The heat makes the air above it shimmer, warping the edges of your vision. The metal's color, orange, then leaning toward yellow, tells a story your eyes begin to learn. Too cool and it won't move. Too hot and it risks becoming something brittle, something ruined. The craft lives in that narrow middle, the same way life does. You don't force it. You coax it. There's no grand announcement of Damascus steel here, no title card floating above the hearth. The legend is in the atmosphere, whispers carried by the way people treat the work with reverence. Some blades will be ordinary. Some will be special. Some will carry patterns that look like watered silk or ripples in a quiet pond, and people will tell stories about how those patterns came to be, stories that blend heat and minerals and mystery until you can't separate fact from devotion. And honestly, you don't need to. The point isn't winning a debate in your head. The point is standing here and feeling the city's heart in motion. You keep walking, letting the rhythm settle into you, strike, turn, strike, sigh of bellows, murmur of water, hush of smoke rising away. Your body starts sinking with it the way it synced with the river. You understand now why Damascus feels alive. It isn't just because people live here. It's because they make here. Constantly. Patiently. Quietly. And somewhere, just ahead, you sense you're close to the place where you won't just observe from a doorway. You'll be guided closer, shown the ritual from within, and your calm orchard coolness will meet forge heat in the most ancient negotiation of all. You drift closer until the doorway stops being a frame and becomes a threshold you're allowed to cross. A dark hand makes a small, practiced gesture. Stand there, not there, and you obey, because your body has already learned that Damascus guides more than it commands. You step into the workshop's belly and the heat wraps you with fire's blunt honesty. Inside, everything has a place. Tools hang in a tidy row, hammers with different faces, tongs shaped for different grips, chisels that look like they've bitten stone and won. The anvil sits in the center like a patient animal, heavy, scarred, enduring. Nearby, charcoal waits in a low bin, black and matte, pretending it isn't about to become the reason metal can glow like a captured sun. You notice the apprentices first. They move with that careful intensity of people learning to become precise. They sweep ash, carry water, feed coals, pump bellows in slow cycles that make the hearth breathe. Their eyes flick constantly, color of metal, angle of a wrist, distance to the quenched trough, like they're learning a language made of heat. No one makes a speech. Teaching happens through tiny corrections, a hand nudging a grip, a slight change in stance, a pause that means stop, and a nod that means keep that rhythm. You almost smile at how it mirrors the river's irrigation gates, knowledge moving through narrow channels, guided so it doesn't spill. A billet of steel rests on a block, dull and unremarkable. This is where the ritual begins, with something plain that doesn't yet deserve your all. Tongs lift it and slide it into the hottest heart of the coals. The bellows exhale. The fire brightens. The workshop's air leans forward with it, shimmering. Waiting is part of the craft. Time here isn't something you save. It's something you spend on purpose. The billet darkens, then blushes, then glows, orange, then nearer yellow, until the color says it's ready to be persuaded. The tongs pull it free and the heat warp makes your vision wobble, like the world is briefly being softened. The first strikes land clean. Not wild, not angry, consistent. Hammer falls, metal answers. The piece is turned between impacts, rotated a fraction, struck again, so the change stays even. You feel the logic in your bones, symmetry keeps strength, care prevents weak spots. Courtyard geometry, translated into muscle. Back into the fire. Out to the anvil. heat, strike, turn, repeat. Your mind tries to demand novelty, like it always does, but your body recognizes the hypnotic safety of repetition. This is what steadiness sounds like. At one moment, a thin powder dusts the glowing surface, flux, melting into a glassy sheen that keeps unwanted grit from sneaking into the metal seams. You think of river water carrying silt, useful in the orchard, troublesome in the wrong place. Damascus is a city of proper channels. The metal is folded, enough to refine, not to show off. Each fold costs fuel, attention, and patience. Charcoal isn't free. Neither is the daily labor of lungs breathing smoke. Good steel, you realize, is partly metallurgy and partly a city agreeing, day after day, to feed a furnace without starving its gardens. Near the hearth sits the quenched trough. The water looks calm, but it holds a kind of authority. An apprentice keeps it ready, skimming stray ash, topping it up, positioning it close enough to reach quickly and far enough to stay safe. The same practical intelligence you've seen everywhere: shade where you need it, water where it matters. When the blade form reaches the right heat, the room tightens into focus. Tongs lift the glowing piece. Time narrows to a single question: now or not now? The color is watched the way orchard hands watched fruit, the way you watched fountain ripples, small signs that decide big outcomes. The quench is sudden. The blade slips into water with a controlled plunge and the workshop fills with a sharp hiss, steam blooming white and fast before thinning away. The smell shifts: wet metal, mineral, a faint tang that wakes your nose. The blade emerges darker, no longer glowing, but changed. Harder. Also, if left like this, too brittle for real use. So it returns to heat again, gentler, tempering, a careful reheating that softens brittleness without undoing hardness. Subtle colors flicker on the surface: straw, bronze, a whisper of deeper tones at the margins, like the blade quietly confessing what it can endure. Grinding comes next, quieter but no less serious: the rasp of stone, fine dust settling, the slow emergence of a clean line. Water is used again to keep the stone from overheating, trickled with the same respect you've felt by the burrata. Water in orchards makes fruit. Water in courtyards makes air kinder. Water here keeps steel from cracking under its own ambition. At the edge of a bench, a small wrapped bundle sits tucked out of the way, cloth tied neatly, placed with intention. It looks insignificant in a room full of fire, which is exactly why your half-dreaming mind remembers it: the faded stripe, the careful knot, the quiet insistence of something meant to be kept safe. The workshop carries on: heat, strike, quench, temper, grind, each step a calm negotiation between elements. And you begin to understand that the real secret isn't mythical. It's discipline. It's maintenance. It's the willingness to repeat careful motions without needing applause. The way the market keeps flowing and the courtyards keep cooling and the river keeps dividing itself into usefulness. You stand there with soot warming on your skin, jasmine somehow threading in from somewhere outside, and you feel the strange comfort of it. A world where craft is not content, not spectacle, just a steady way of living. The blade cools enough that it stops warping the air around it, and the workshop's heat becomes background again, still present, still breathing, but no longer the only thing your senses can hold. You watch the surface as it shifts from raw, darkened metal into something closer to finished. Not finished as in perfect, finished as in ready to be seen. A quieter corner of the forge pulls your attention, where sound changes texture. The hammering fades into softer rasping, stone on steel, grit whispering under steady hands, a rhythm that's less heartbeat and more breathing. An apprentice sets the blade on a low support and begins the long, unglamorous work of smoothing. Abrasive stone moves along the length in patient passes. Water is trickled occasionally, not dramatic splashes, just enough to keep heat from building, enough to carry away fine dust. The same lesson again. Everything here survives by being cooled at the right time. You see how the city repeats itself. The courtyard gave you patterned light through carved wood. The market gave you braided currents of people, repeating stalls, repeating motions. The river gave you branching channels that split and rejoin like a mind learning to calm itself. Now the forge shows you repetition made tangible. The same stroke, the same angle, again and again until a rough surface becomes calm enough to reflect. As the blade's skin clears of scale and soot, light begins to behave differently on it. At first, it's just brightness sliding along the line. Then the line sharpens. Then, in certain angles, something faint appears beneath the polished sheen, like a ghost of ripples, a suggestion of flowing water caught inside metal. You lean slightly, and it shifts. You move your head the other way, and it shifts back. The pattern refuses to sit still, the way silk refuses to stay one color, the way fountain ripples refuse to be pinned. It's tempting to call it decoration, because your brain likes to file things into familiar categories. Pretty surface. Nice finish. Aesthetic choice. But you can feel, even without anyone explaining, that this is deeper. The pattern is a trace of what happened inside the blade. Heat cycles, carbon moving, structure settling into layers and bands. A map of discipline. A record of patience. The apprentice wipes the steel with a cloth, then holds it under a strip of angled daylight coming through an overhead opening. The beam lands across the blade like a pale ribbon, and for a moment you see the pattern more clearly. Watery lines, soft curves, flowing bands that look almost like the burrata's surface when wind runs across it. The city keeps giving you water in different disguises. On a bench nearby, shallow bowls sit ready, one with clear water, one with a liquid that smells faintly sour, like vinegar or fermented fruit. Another cloth is folded neatly, damp and clean. The blade is placed down, and the surface is cleaned again, because pattern reveals itself only when the steel is treated with respect. The apprentice's hands move like someone tending a courtyard plant, gentle, careful, consistent. The sour liquid is applied, not poured dramatically, just rubbed in thin, even passes. The steel darkens slightly where it touches, and then, slowly, the pattern rises into view as if it's been waiting behind a veil. It's subtle at first, a low contrast between bands, then clearer, pale and dark lines, shifting in complexity along the blade's length. The effect isn't loud. It's intimate. It makes you lean closer without realizing you're doing it. You realize this is why stories cling to these blades. Not because they're magic, but because they look like they contain weather, like they contain river movement, like they contain time. The blade is rinsed, dried, and rubbed again, oil applied in a thin film so the surface doesn't drink moisture from the air. The oil catches light, and the pattern becomes softer, more velvety, like watered silk. Your mind loops back to the market textiles, to the way silk shimmered under shade screens. The same visual language runs through Damascus: water made visible, repetition made beautiful. You reach out, slowly, carefully, and your fingers hover just above the steel. You don't touch the edge. You touch the flat, the safer plane, feeling the coolness and the faintest texture where polishing has left microscopic traces. It's surprisingly comforting, a surface that is both hard and calm, shaped by fire but now quiet enough to rest in your hand. You think of your own nervous system, shaped by days that run too hot, too long, and how badly you crave a tempering phase. Not a reset. Just a gentle reheating that makes you tougher without making you brittle. Overhead, latticework filters more light into the workspace. The grid lands across the blade and the pattern underneath seems to respond. Like two kinds of order meeting, carved geometry on the surface of the day, flowing lines inside the steel. Straight and curved. Control and movement. The city never chooses only one. It insists on both. You watch an apprentice test the blade's balance without drama, just a careful hold, a small shift in grip, an attentive pause. This isn't performance. It's verification. The same way someone checked a water gate in the orchard, the same way someone adjusted a pot's placement in a courtyard. The same quiet belief that small details decide the health of the whole system. Your eyes drift to the side bench again, to that wrapped bundle with its careful knot. It sits there like a comma in the room's rhythm, present, unremarkable, and yet oddly sticky in your mind. Not because it's exciting, but because it feels specific, intentional. A thing that belongs to a route, a handoff, a schedule. And schedules matter here. Even in a city that teaches you to slow down, things still move from person to person, place to place, like water through channels. For now, though, the bundle remains where it is, and the workshop remains in its steady loop: polish, rinse, etch, oil, heat, strike, temper. Repeat until the blade becomes not just usable, but coherent. Your breathing matches the softer sounds, the cloth's drag on metal, the faint splash of rinse water, the whisper of oil being spread thin. You step back a little, letting the scene settle into you. The blade's surface holds the river in lines. The light holds the courtyard in grids. The room holds the forge in warmth. And you, tired, quiet, finally not fighting, hold the city's repeating lesson. Endurance is built, patiently, in small, careful cycles. Not by burning hotter. By learning when to cool. You're still letting the blade's watery pattern settle in your mind when the workshop's rhythm slips. Just a hair, just enough that your body notices before your thoughts do. The cloth on metal hush pauses. An apprentice's hands hover mid-motion. The bellows keeps breathing, but the room's attention tilts, like a flock turning together for no obvious reason. It takes you a second to understand what changed, because nothing explodes and nobody performs panic. The change is quieter than that, the sudden absence of something you'd already filed away as. There. That wrapped bundle on the side bench, the faded stripe, the careful knot, the way it sat like a comma in the sentence of the room, no longer sits there at all. Your eyes go back to the bench as if they can shame reality into cooperating. Bare wood. A faint outline in dust where the cloth had rested. A small crescent of charcoal grit, disturbed. That's it. The bundle has become a missing shape. The apprentices register it in the same exact way they read heat color. One sweeps a palm across the bench and studies the soot as if it can speak. Another checks the hooks and ledges where finished items wait. Their movements stay steady, but the steadiness has a new edge. Time matters now. A figure appears at the doorway, dust on sandals, shoulders set in that "I have a route" posture. A messenger, you decide, because the body language is unmistakable. Someone who moves between places, not within one. They stand just inside the threshold, eyes skimming the room with polite efficiency. They don't speak. Nobody speaks. But the question lands anyway, heavy as a hammer. Is it ready? The forge master, older hands, calmer stance, looks to the bench, then to the apprentice who usually handles handoffs. 2 fingers point to where the bundle should be, then the empty palm opens. The messenger's gaze returns to that emptiness and lingers, long enough for you to feel the chain of small dependencies tightening. A delivery delayed becomes a gate unfixed, a channel misset, an orchard row thirstier than it should be. You don't know what's inside the bundle with certainty, but you remember how it was placed, not tossed, not forgotten. Intentional. The kind of bundle that carries modest-looking parts with oversized consequences. Perhaps newly forged fittings for an irrigation gate, small steel pins wrapped so they won't clink, and a wax-sealed note meant for the water keepers. A single worn pin can turn a clean flow into a leak, or a controlled split into a stubborn trickle. Your tired modern brain tries to minimize it. It's probably nearby. It's probably nothing. Don't get involved. You came here to rest. And yes, adorable. Damascus is not a spa. It's a living machine, and you've just been noticed as an extra moving part. The forge master's attention slides to you, not accusing and not pleading, simply acknowledging that you are here, awake, observant, and not already tied to bellows or stone. The silent invitation arrives, and your body answers before your brain finishes negotiating. You start with the simplest truth: the bundle was here, and now it isn't. So you look for the story of movement. The bench shows a slight smear where cloth dragged over dust. On the floor, footprints overlap, some powdered with charcoal, some clean, and one set pressed into a faint dampness that doesn't belong to a forge. A thin dark patch near the threshold dries into the stone, like someone stepped in with river cool on their soles. You lean toward the doorway and breathe. Smoke, charcoal, oil, yes. But threaded through it is something softer, jasmine. Not enough to perfume the room, just enough to suggest it has been carried in on clothing, brushed off a sleeve, or caught in a knot of fabric. Your eyes sweep the doorway frame. A small nail protrudes from the wood, used for hanging cloths or tools, and a single pale fiber clings there, so thin you almost miss it. You pinch it gently between your fingers. It feels like woven thread, not hair, not plant. Your fingertips are already smudged with soot, and you notice the contrast. Black dust on skin, pale fiber against it, like spice powder on the market air. The city keeps offering you tiny details, then daring you to do something useful with them. Outside, the lane is brighter and the sounds widen. Footsteps, cartwheels, a distant clink of copper. The market's braided current is only a turn away. A bundle like that could slip into the flow and become invisible in seconds. In this city, disappearance doesn't require drama. It only requires a corner. Inside, the messenger waits, posture unchanged, but their stillness is now the loudest sound in the room. The forge master makes a small motion, 2 fingers touching their own wrist, then pointing outward. Time. Route. The apprentices pause, reading your next move like they read metal color. You picture the cloth again, the faded stripe, the careful knot, and hold it in your mind like a small lantern. Damascus is a city of patterns. It teaches you to notice repeats and disruptions. You step fully into the lane, letting the workshop's heat fall behind you like a closing door, and you let your breathing slow, not because you're calm, but because calm helps you see. Somewhere in this moving city, a small wrapped bundle is traveling without permission. And you, still carrying river cool in your sleeves, still smelling jasmine in your memory, still seeing watered lines in steel, begin to look for the first place the story left its tracks. You move as if you're trying not to startle the city, because you've learned that Damascus doesn't respond well to frantic energy. It just absorbs it and keeps going, which is honestly rude in the most calming way. The lane outside the forge is brighter than the workshop, but it still carries the forge's signature: fine charcoal dust, a faint metallic tang, a warmth that lingers on stone like a handprint. You start with what the floor already told you: the damp footprint near the threshold. Dampness doesn't belong to a forge unless someone brings it in. River cool on a sole. Courtyard water on a sandal. A shortcut taken through shade. You follow the lane a few paces and pause, letting your senses do their slow work. Not detective work, not the cinematic kind. This is orchard work. Courtyard work. The kind where you notice what's different in a pattern that usually repeats. First sound. The hammering behind you fades as you turn a corner, then returns in a thinner echo through an archway, like the city is carrying the rhythm along its bones. You listen for where it changes, where one workshop's ringing tone gives way to another's duller thud. The steel district has its own map and sound, and if the bundle moved fast, it likely moved where sound is loud enough to swallow small rustles, but structured enough that people still make space. Markets. Narrow corridors. Places where a wrapped cloth won't look suspicious because everyone carries something. Second scent. The lane offers smoke and oil, but the jasmine thread is still there, light as a thought, persistent as a promise. Jasmine doesn't float everywhere equally. It gathers near courtyards, near hidden vines, near places where people carry coolness on their sleeves. If the bundle brushed against jasmine, the cloth might hold a trace. If the carrier passed close to a vine, a bloom could have snagged, crushed, left a smear of scent or a pale petal fragment. You walk slowly, eyes lowered more than you'd expect, because the ground is the honest storyteller here. Stone holds scuffs, dust holds smears, damp leaves prints that don't belong. You pass a doorway where a strip of shade cuts across the lane like a dark ribbon. In that shade, footprints show more clearly, charcoal dark soles, then lighter impressions where dust has been disturbed. One set is fresher than the rest. Not because you know in a magical way, but because the dust at the edges hasn't settled back into place yet. The tread is uneven, suggesting someone carrying weight on one side, favoring a foot. And in the heel imprint, there it is again, dark and dampness, as if the sole kissed water not long ago. You follow. The lane bends into a passage that tilts toward the market, and you feel the city's current returning, more bodies, more motion, more layered smells. This is where a small missing object can vanish completely. You would think that would make you panic, but the city has been training you not to. Your job is not to fight the current. Your job is to read it. A shaded corridor opens, and you step into it. The light dims, turning the world into soft contrast. Bright strips at the far end, dim midtones near you. Stalls have already begun their day, copper catching stray light, textiles hanging like calm waterfalls, spice cones standing in patient order. Everyone is carrying something. Everyone is moving. In this environment, a wrapped bundle is invisible the way a single leaf is invisible in an orchard. So you look for what doesn't match. You notice charcoal dust on the stone near the corridor's edge, faint but distinct, as if a cloth brushed a soot-smudged sleeve and then grazed the wall. A small crescent mark, darker than the rest. It's the kind of detail your tired brain would normally ignore because it's not important. But in Damascus, important is usually small. You move closer. The mark sits just below a low hook embedded in the wall, used for hanging goods. Above it, a tiny pale fleck clings. Jasmine petal? You don't touch it at first. You just breathe near it. The scent lifts, faint but real. Your chest loosens a fraction. Not relief, direction. You keep walking, letting the corridor carry you. The market hums around you with its steady choreography, and you slip through without bumping anyone because your steps have learned the city's timing. You pass under another archway and the air changes again, cooler, as if you're near a courtyard mouth. There, near the base of a wall where vines have found purchase, you see a small scatter of white on the stone, not a neat cluster, but the messy aftermath of contact. Crushed blossoms, bruised petals. Someone brushed past too close, carrying something bulky enough to snag. Jasmine doesn't lie about being disturbed. It shows it immediately, like a delicate alarm. Your gaze sweeps upward along the vine. Nothing hanging. No bundle caught. But the trail continues. A few petals leading toward a narrow side lane that slopes gently downhill. You take it. The lane is quieter, the kind of corridor that feels like a vein rather than an artery. Shade deepens, and the smell of damp stone grows stronger. You hear water now, not a fountain murmur, more like a thin channel running under a slab, the quick secret sound you recognize near the orchards. The city's water system runs beneath everything, and the closer you get to it, the more your earlier clue makes sense. Damp soils. At a corner, you find a shallow puddle, small, fresh, not yet evaporated, where water has seeped from a joint in the stone. Footprints pass through it, leaving darker impressions beyond. Whoever walked here did so recently enough that the edges of the prints are still crisp. You follow them again. The lane opens briefly onto a tiny courtyard entrance, half hidden, not grand, where a low fountain overflows just a little, feeding a narrow channel that slips away under a threshold. The overflow has made the stones glossy at the edge, and the prints you're tracking bend right beside it. Someone paused here. Perhaps to adjust grip, retie a knot, shift weight. You can almost see it, a bundle lifted, set down for a heartbeat, then picked up again. On the stone near the fountain's lip, you spot a dark smudge, charcoal dust mixed with moisture, dragged in a quick line as if cloth touched wet stone. The mark points, literally, toward the channel's direction, toward the lower lanes that lead, inevitably, toward the river's cooler edge. Now the hints stack neatly: damp soils, jasmine bruising, charcoal smear, water channel whisper. It's not certainty, but it's enough to keep moving without flailing. You feel the city nudging you outward, away from the densest market flow, toward where water management becomes visible again, where people who live by channels and gates might notice an unfamiliar bundle being carried in haste. You step forward, following the lane as it slopes, and the air changes by degrees, less smoke, more green. The forge hammering becomes a distant memory, the market hum becomes muffled, and the quiet persistence of water grows clearer, like a guide walking just ahead of you in the dark. The lane keeps sloping until stone gives way to air that feels less trapped. The city loosens its grip on you in small increments, one fewer arch, one wider patch of sky, one breath that doesn't bounce off walls and return to you. The water sound grows clearer too, not just a hidden whisper under slabs, but a more open rush, like the city is letting you hear the mechanism that keeps it alive. By the time you step out toward the river edge again, the sun has climbed high enough to change the rules. Noon doesn't ask permission. It arrives like a hand placed flat on your head, pressing warmth into your hair and down your spine. You feel heat on the stones, heat on your cheeks, heat rising from the ground as if the earth is exhaling. And yet, right here, close to the Barada and its channels, there's still a kind of mercy. A breeze moves along the water. Leaves stir. Shade exists where trees are willing to offer it. The orchard path is brighter now than it was at dawn, and the green canopy looks thicker, more defensive. Trees hold their leaves like shields. Fruit hangs heavier, glossy with sun, and the air smells sweetened by ripening, an edible perfume that makes your tired brain briefly consider quitting your life and becoming someone who simply checks branches for a living. Then you remember you would last maybe 2 days before complaining about insects, and the fantasy dissolves politely. You slow down anyway, because rushing under noon sun is how you turn yourself into a cranky, dehydrated cautionary tale. The channel beside the path runs fast, its surface broken by small ripples where it hits stones placed to guide it. You can see why your trail led here. Water is not just scenery, it's traffic. It creates routes, shortcuts, habits. People follow channels the way they follow streets, because the channel promises shade, cooler air, and predictable turns. You look for signs of your missing bundle in the language the orchard speaks. Disturbed leaves, crushed blossoms, damp footprints, charcoal smears where cloth brushed bark. The jasmine clue is quieter here, less vine spill, more orchard bloom, yet you still catch occasional white petals caught on low branches, the kind that can cling to fabric like a small, stubborn witness. At a junction where channels split, you stop. The water divides into narrower veins, each one feeding a different row of trees. Small gates sit at the splits, simple boards and stones arranged with practiced precision. You remember the forge master touching wrist then pointing outward. Time. Route. These gates are time made visible. Water now, water later. This road today, that road tomorrow. Somebody decides. Somebody remembers. Somebody maintains. And as if the city hears your thoughts and decides to demonstrate, you see them, the water keepers. Not grand officials, not ceremonial guardians. Just people with the posture of those who spend their days paying attention to flow. Their clothing is practical. Their hands are marked not by soot like the forge hands, but by dampness and earth. They move along the channels with measured steps, checking the gates, nudging stones, clearing stray leaves that could redirect water the wrong way. Their work is quiet, and yet it holds the entire city in its palm. You keep your movements gentle, not because you're afraid, but because you've learned that calm earns you access faster than urgency. You stand where the shade falls across the channel and watch as one waterkeeper adjusts a small board. The flow changes immediately. One stream thins, another strengthens, and a row of trees seems to sigh in invisible relief. It's so simple it's almost insulting to your modern sense of complexity. No app. No dashboard. No push notification. Just eyes, hands, and a memory of the system. You look down at the stones around the gate. There, pressed into damp earth beside the channel, footprints. Recent. The edges still clean. Not the deep tread of someone carrying heavy fruit baskets, but the lighter pattern of someone moving faster, shifting weight. You follow the prints with your eyes and see where they turn off the main path into a narrower corridor between trees. You slip into that corridor, letting leaves brush your shoulders. The shade thickens here, and the air cools just enough to make you exhale without thinking. Somewhere above, a bird scolds the world for existing. You ignore it with the practiced grace of someone who has been judged before. The footprints continue, then overlap with older ones, then fade where the ground hardens into dried packed soil. Your clue tries to dissolve. But the orchard has other tells. A low branch is bent slightly downward, leaves shaken loose. A few pale blossoms lie crushed near the base, jasmine-like in color, though here the scent is mixed with orchard sweetness. And yes, a faint charcoal smudge on bark, like cloth brushed too close. You keep moving until the corridor opens into a small working space, a flat patch of ground near a wider channel, where tools rest, wooden rakes, a shovel, a bundle of reed mats used to reinforce banks. A clay jar sits in shade, sweating coolness. The water here runs strong, and the channel's edge is lined with stones set carefully to prevent erosion. Someone is maintaining this section. Recently. Your eyes scan the ground for anything out of place. A scrap of cloth, a stray knot fiber, the imprint of a bundle set down. Near the jar, you see a rectangular patch of dust disturbed, as if something was laid there and lifted again. Beside it, a thin, pale thread catches on a reed mat's edge. You pinch it and feel the same woven texture as before. Not proof, but a breadcrumb. You step closer to the channel and listen. Water here sounds different, deeper, more urgent, as if this vein carries more responsibility. You realize you might be near one of the key distribution points, the kind that feeds both orchard and city. A place where a missing pin or fitting could matter. A place where a messenger might come. A place where someone could intercept without needing to enter the forge again. You glance toward the river beyond the trees. Light flashes off its surface like scattered coins. The city's wall is farther away now, softened by distance and heat haze. Here, the orchard feels like its own kingdom, ruled by water schedules, shade, and the steady logic of survival. A waterkeeper approaches along the path, pausing near the tools. Their gaze flicks to the disturbed dust patch, then to the reed mats, then along the corridor you came through. They don't speak, and you don't either. But in their stillness you feel the question, what are you doing in the veins of the city? You answer by being gentle. You point, quietly, with your attention rather than your finger, to the thread, the dust patch, the footprints. You let your body say what your mouth doesn't. Something moved through here that shouldn't have, carrying something wrapped, leaving charcoal where charcoal doesn't belong. The waterkeeper's eyes narrow slightly, not in suspicion, but in focus. They step closer to the channel and look at the gate hardware: wood, stone, and small metal parts fitted with plain brilliance. Their hand hovers near a fastening point as if checking for missing pieces. You can almost feel the city's pulse in that pause. Because if something is missing here, it isn't just a lost bundle. It's a threat in rhythm. You follow their gaze and see it too, a place where a small metal pin should sit more snugly, where the gate board could slip if jostled. A vulnerability. A point of failure that would look trivial to anyone who doesn't live by water. The search shifts in your mind from find the bundle to protect the flow. You feel the Forge Master's urgency echoing here in a different language. Steel and water, both shaped by careful control, both ruined by a tiny missing part. And suddenly you understand why the trail led you back to the orchard at noon, where heat makes everything more fragile. Because the city is not just being inconvenienced by loss. It's being tested at its most essential junction, right where water decides who gets to breathe. The waterkeeper's hand hovers over that vulnerable fastening point, and the pause feels longer than it is. Noon heat presses down, and you suddenly understand how thin the margin is between a city functioning and a city quietly suffering. A tiny pin loosened, a gate board shifting, a channel getting more water than it should while another goes dry. And because the system is so well built, it can hide trouble for a while, until the trouble decides to become obvious. You follow the waterkeeper along the channel's edge, stepping where stones are set for footing. Their pace isn't fast. It's precise. They watch the flow like you watch the blade's surface when the pattern rose into view, looking for subtle differences, for a line that shouldn't curve, for a shimmer that means depth is wrong. You find yourself copying the attention, because Damascus has been training you all day in the same skill. Notice what shifts. At the next split, the stream's tone changes. It becomes slightly higher, thinner, like a throat clearing. The surface looks tense too, ripples crowding, little swirls forming where they shouldn't. Water doesn't complain loudly. It just starts behaving oddly when it's being forced. The waterkeeper kneels and runs fingers along the channel's edge, then points, not at the water, but at the ground beside it. Dampness spreads there in a strange shape, a dark stain that doesn't follow the neat logic of irrigation. It's seepage, pressure, water trying to escape a route that's been restricted. You step closer and feel it under your sandals. The ground is softer here, slightly spongy, as if it's been drinking more than its share. A healthy channel feeds trees and returns calmly to its bed. This channel, right now, feels like it's pushing against its own boundaries. You move along the stain's direction, and the orchard begins to tell you a second story. One row of trees looks happier, leaves glossy, shade thicker. Another row, just beyond, looks not dying, not collapsing, but subtly stressed. Leaves hang a little flatter. The air beneath them feels warmer, less damp. Fruit looks smaller on some branches. It's the quiet kind of suffering, the kind that doesn't scream until it has no choice. The waterkeeper's gaze flicks between the too wet stain and the too dry row, and you can almost see the invisible map tightening in their mind. Water is being held back somewhere, pressure building, seepage escaping, and the downstream branches that should be fed are being quietly starved. If this keeps up, the orchard will drop fruit early. The shade will thin. The coolness that makes the city bearable will weaken. And beyond the orchard, inside the city walls, the forges will feel it too, because fire can be contained only if water remains dependable. You follow the channel as it narrows, slipping under a low arch of branches. The sound of water shifts again, less flow, more gurgle. A small whirl forms where the channel dips under a stone slab, like the water is hesitating before diving into darkness. That's your clue, hidden routes. Damascus doesn't put all its lifelines on display. The river splits into surface channels, yes, but some veins disappear under stone, running beneath paths and walls, reappearing where they're needed. Hidden channels keep water cool and protected. They also make sabotage, or simple blockage, harder to spot until it's already messing with everything. The waterkeeper leads you to a low stone structure partially covered by reed matting and leaves, tucked beside a path where most people would walk right by. It looks like nothing. A lump of stone. A shadow. A corner that doesn't invite curiosity. But the waterkeeper's hands treat it like a door. They pull the mat back and reveal a small access opening, an old maintenance hatch framed with worn stone, its edges smooth from years of lifting and setting back. Beneath it, darkness. Beneath that, the sound of water traveling in a confined throat. You crouch and peer in. The air coming out is cooler, damp, with a faint mineral tang. And you hear it clearly now. The water is not flowing cleanly. It's choked. It makes a thick, intermittent sound. Push, pause, push, like breath through a blocked nose. Not catastrophic yet, but headed that way. The waterkeeper picks up a thin hook tool from nearby, one of the maintenance tools resting by the reeds, and slides it into the opening. They probe gently, not jabbing wildly, because wildness breaks things. The hook catches. Resistance. They pull, and the tool flexes slightly as if it snagged on a dense knot of debris. You lean closer and watch the water level inside. It trembles. The surface rises a fraction, then sinks. It wants to move, but something is making it pay a toll. You reach for another tool, a short wooden rake, and use it to lift leaves away from the hatch rim so they don't fall in. Your hands move without much thought. It's not heroism. It's the simple truth that you're here and you have hands and the city is asking for steadiness. The waterkeeper pulls again, and something dark shifts in the opening. A mass of reed fibers and silt and tangled plant matter appears, plastered wet and heavy. It looks like ordinary blockage at first, the kind that happens when leaves fall or a storm sends debris into channels. But then you see it, cloth woven into the mess, wrapped tight around reeds like a deliberate bandage. Not an accident. The cloth is darkened with water and grit, but even through the grime you catch a familiar detail, faded stripe, the kind that would stand out in a forge where everything else is soot and bare wood. Your stomach tightens, not with fear, but with that sharp, clean recognition that makes everything click into place. The missing bundle. It hasn't simply wandered off into the market flow. It's been used, stuffed, jammed into a hidden vein where water can't easily be seen, where pressure can build quietly, where seepage can soften banks until they fail. A small act with huge consequences, timed perfectly for noon heat when the city is least forgiving. The waterkeeper's hands pause for half a breath. Again, that focusing stillness. Then they begin peeling the cloth away from the reeds with careful efficiency. Wet fibers cling stubbornly. Silt resists. Water pulses behind the blockage like an impatient animal. Each tug loosens the knot by a millimeter. As they work, you look around, your mind mapping consequences the way you map patterns on steel. If this blockage holds, the orchard's dry row will worsen. Fruit will shrivel. Shade will thin. But that's only half the problem. The forges rely on water too, not just for quenching blades, but for cooling stones, washing grit, keeping metal from cracking under heat's arrogance. If the water schedule collapses, the forges lose their tempering rhythm. They go too hot, too brittle, too risky. A city that prides itself on controlled flame cannot afford uncontrolled thirst. You feel, suddenly, how everything you've seen today is one system. Jasmine courtyards are not separate from sword steel forges. The market's braided flow is not separate from orchard channels. Even the watered pattern in steel, those ripples you admired, now feels like a warning. When flow is interrupted, patterns become stress lines. The waterkeeper finally frees a thick clump of debris. It lifts with a wet slap, and the channel inside surges, water rushing forward in a relieved, eager push. The sound changes immediately. Less gurgle, more clean run. The seepage stain beside the channel begins, slowly, to stop spreading. But the cloth is only part of what was jammed in. You can see deeper inside, where something firm still blocks the throat. A small hard shape catching light faintly in the darkness. Metal, perhaps. A pin. A fitting. Something the bundle carried. Something that was supposed to secure gates, not choke them. You hold your breath, not because the moment is dramatic, but because it's delicate. The city's hidden vein is exposed, vulnerable, and the fix must be as careful as everything else here. You're not just searching anymore. You're protecting the flow that keeps Damascus alive, from orchard root to forge hearth. You keep your body low beside the hatch, because the moment feels like the city's throat is exposed, and you don't want to cough into it. Water is already running cleaner behind the first clump of reeds and cloth. But that deeper hard shape remains, wedged just out of reach, stubborn enough to keep the flow from becoming fully free. The channel sound is better now, yes, but still not the easy, confident run you heard in the open orchard veins. It's like someone breathing through a straw when they should be able to breathe through a whole chest. The waterkeeper steadies the hatch rim with one hand and slides the hook tool back into the dark with the other. Their movements stay slow and exact, because haste is how you snap a tool or chip stone or turn a solvable problem into a new one. You mirror the patience without being asked. You hold the reed matting away from the opening. You clear loose leaves. You keep the workspace clean enough that nothing else falls in and becomes a second blockage, because the city really doesn't need extra plot twists right now. The hook scrapes something firm. The sound is different from reed fibers, sharper, metallic, a bright little complaint. The tool catches, slips, catches again. The waterkeeper adjusts the angle, then pulls with steady pressure, not jerking. You can see the tool flex. You can see the water inside pulse harder, as if it senses freedom is close and is trying to help. A small shape finally shifts into view, just enough for a thin line of daylight to catch it. Metal, darkened and wet, the size of a finger joint. A pin. A fitting. Something that never should have been shoved here. It sits crosswise like a tiny barricade, catching silt and reed fibers behind it, turning a narrow throat into a clogged fist. You reach for a second tool, a thin wooden rod, smooth from use, and slide it into the opening alongside the hook. Carefully you press, not to force the pin deeper, but to rotate it into a more cooperative angle. It moves a fraction. The hook catches better. The waterkeeper pulls again. The pin slides forward, scraping stone with a small grinding sound that makes your teeth itch. Then it's out. It lands in the waterkeeper's palm with a wet clink, heavier than it looks. Silt coats it. A strip of cloth fiber clings to one edge. This little piece, this boring little lump of metal, has been quietly starving a row of trees and pressurizing a channel like a bad idea given physical form. The channel responds immediately, as if it's been holding its breath. Water surges through the hidden vein in a clean rush, the sound changing from gurgle to glide. The surface in the hatch opening smooths out. The seepage stain beside the channel stops spreading and begins, slowly, to darken less, as the pressure in the walls eases. You sit back on your heels and let that sound land in your nervous system. A steady flow is weirdly emotional when you've spent too long around constant friction. It's the same relief you felt hearing the bellows breathe at the forge. Controlled, dependable, purposeful. The same quiet kindness you felt in the courtyard fountain, water doing its job without drama. But the work isn't finished just because the water is moving again. Damascus doesn't do good enough. It does maintenance. It does follow through. It does the unsexy part where you make sure the fix will still be a fix tomorrow. The waterkeeper rinses the pin in a shallow bowl, turning it under water until the silt loosens and swirls away. You help by pouring a little clean water from the sweating clay jar into the bowl, refreshing it. The pin's shape becomes clear, simple, functional, made to hold a gate board in place. Not a treasure. Not a mystery artifact. Just a crucial, humble connector, like a stitch in cloth that you never think about until it snaps. You look at the debris pile pulled from the channel, reeds, leaves, blackened cloth. The cloth is unmistakable now. That faded stripe. That careful knot, half undone and soaked, the bundle's dignity ruined by being turned into sabotage. You lift it carefully, as if you're handling something that can still be put back into the right story. Inside, you find more small metal pieces, 2 other pins, a narrow fitting, and a wax-sealed note wrapped to resist moisture. The wax is scuffed but intact. The city's habit of wrapping things properly, of building for real life, has saved the message from the river's impatient fingers. You don't open it. You don't need to. You know where it belongs. The waterkeeper moves along the channel, checking the next gate, then the next. Their hands adjust stones, nudge a board, clear a leaf. They don't reset the system, like a modern device. They simply restore the intended route, using the oldest interface in the world: touch, sight, and memory. You follow, holding the retrieved bundle close to your chest so it doesn't drip grit into everything. Your sleeves pick up dampness and a faint charcoal smear. You can feel how easily the city could be thrown off by a small act like this, and how quickly it can be steadied again by people who know its anatomy. At the split where the stress row begins, the waterkeeper pauses and lifts the gate board slightly, letting a fuller stream pour into the thirsty channel. The change is immediate. The water's tone deepens. The channel stops sounding strained and starts sounding content. It's ridiculous how fast the world responds when you give it what it needs. You glance at the trees that look subtly stressed. Under fresh flow, their shade seems thicker already, not because leaves grow in seconds, but because your perception changes when you know relief is arriving. You can almost feel the orchard's microclimate returning to itself, cooler air settling, moisture rising, the faint sweetness of fruit not having to panic ripen under thirst. You look back at the hatch, now covered again with reed matting and leaves arranged just so, not to hide it from those who need it, but to protect it from random interference. You understand now why the city hides its veins. Not out of secrecy for secrecy's sake, but because every lifeline needs a little shelter. Before you leave the junction, the waterkeeper checks the gate hardware where that pin should sit more snugly. The missing piece is replaced with one from the recovered bundle, cleaned, set, secured with practiced pressure. No flourish. Just correctness. The board holds. The flow stays obedient. The city's pulse steadies. You exhale, long and slow, and realize you've been holding tension you didn't even know was there. This is the kind of problem you can solve, a small blockage, a vulnerable point, a fix that turns chaos back into rhythm. It doesn't erase your bigger life. It doesn't pay your bills. But it proves something to your tired mind. Systems can be repaired. Quietly. Patiently. Without burning everything down. With the remaining items wrapped back into their cloth, retied as best as soaked fabric allows, you begin to angle your steps back toward the city's interior. The forges will need their fittings. The messenger will need their route. And Damascus, now breathing water again, will keep teaching you the same lesson in every language it speaks. Control isn't force. It's care. You carry the retied bundle the way you'd carry a sleeping animal, close, steady, with that careful awareness that sudden movement has consequences. The cloth is damp and a little heavy now, darkened by river work and stained with honest grit. It's not pretty, but it's back in the right story. As you walk from the orchard veins toward the city's tighter lanes, you feel the air warm again, then cool in brief shaded pockets, like Damascus is breathing in segments. The sun still presses from above, but the river breeze follows you a little way, clinging to your sleeves as if it doesn't fully trust you to survive stone heat alone. Your sandals pick up dust again. The dampness on them dries quickly, leaving faint marks that crumble into nothing behind you. The waterkeeper's last adjustments still echo in your mind, a board lifted, a flow restored, a stressed row given its share. You can't see the relief in the trees yet, not in any dramatic way, but you feel it in the sound of water, clean run, obedient channels, less strain. The city's pulse steadies when its veins are unblocked. It's a simple truth, and it lands in your tired chest like permission to soften. You pass through market edges again, where shade screens turn noon glare into manageable stripes. The souk is still flowing, braided footsteps, copper glints, spice scent, but now you move through it differently. Earlier, you drifted like a leaf in the fountain's current. Now you're a leaf with a destination. You still don't rush. You just hold your line. You catch a few curious glances, not suspicious, not invasive, just that quick human measurement. Someone carrying a damp soot-streaked bundle through the market at midday has clearly had a morning. If anyone asks themselves why, they don't ask you. Damascus has a polite way of letting you keep your reasons. As you near the steel district, smoke threads back into the air, thin and familiar. The hammer rhythm returns, crisp at first and then layered as multiple workshops overlap. Tap against ring, ring against thud. The sound isn't louder than before. It's steadier. Or maybe your nervous system is steadier now, so it interprets the rhythm as something you can lean on rather than something you need to brace against. You step under the same workshop overhang you left earlier, and the heat meets you like a remembered hand. The air shimmers faintly near the hearth. The bellows breathes in slow cycles. The apprentices move in their practice loop, feed, pump, sweep, carry, like nothing paused, because in a living city, work rarely stops completely. It simply shifts to accommodate small crises. And yet, something has changed. You feel it immediately in the way bodies hold themselves. There's less tightness. Less that contained, silent edge you saw when the bench was suddenly bare. The room still has focus, always, but the focus is no longer sharpened by missing time. It's softened by regained rhythm. Your gaze goes straight to the side bench. The dust outline is still there, a faint rectangle where the bundle had been, like a bruise on the workshop's routine. You step toward it and set the damp cloth down exactly where it belonged, letting it land with a quiet thud that sounds almost ceremonial in the hush between hammer strikes. An apprentice's eyes flick over. A hand pauses mid-wipe. Then the movement resumes, but smoother, like a knot in a thread being pulled free. The forge master's attention shifts to the bench, then to your submarked hands, then, inevitably, to the dampness on your sleeves and the faint orchard leaf stuck near your cuff. You don't have to explain. Your body is the explanation. River work. Channel work. Maintenance. The messenger is still there, too, waiting with that stillness that makes time feel tangible. They stand near the doorway, posture unchanged, but their attention is sharper now, like a bowstring held. When the bundle appears on the bench again, their shoulders don't dramatically drop. No one here performs relief. But you see a minute adjustment in stance, a fraction less tension in how weight rests on feet. A route can continue. A handoff can happen. A schedule can remain a schedule instead of becoming a problem. The forge master checks the bundle with a glance that reads details the way they read steel color. The cloth is damp. The knot is retied. The contents are present. The wax seal, scuffed but intact, sits like a stubborn little promise inside. The forge master's fingers hover briefly over it, then shift to the metal fittings, pins and small parts meant for gates, meant for holding water in its proper paths. The irony is quiet and almost funny in a way that makes you want to laugh and then not laugh because you're standing near fire and you'd rather keep your lungs calm. The city has a sense of humor. It's just not loud about it. A basin of water is brought closer, not dumped, not splashed, just placed with care. The fittings are rinsed, wiped, dried. A thin film of oil touches metal surfaces to keep moisture from turning them into rust. Even now, after an interruption that could have unraveled the day, the response is not drama. It's procedure. It's the same discipline that makes a blade temper correctly, the same discipline that makes a courtyard stay cool, the same discipline that keeps a market flowing without collision. Nearby, you notice the quenched trough. The surface is calmer than it was, topped up clean enough. An apprentice schemes stray ash, adjusts the trough's position with small shifts, checking that it's close enough to reach and far enough to stay safe. Water is treated like a colleague, not an accessory. You think of the hidden channel hatch, reed covered and protected, and you feel a quiet satisfaction knowing the city's water is moving right again. The forge can breathe. The tempering rhythm can remain gentle instead of panicked. Someone returns to grinding, stone whispering against steel. Another returns to polishing, cloth dragging in slow circles that feel almost hypnotic. The blade pattern you saw earlier, those watery lines, seems to hover in your mind like an afterimage. You understand it differently now. It isn't just beauty. It's proof that controlled flow leaves a signature, whether in water channels or inside metal itself. You stand a little to the side, letting the workshop reclaim its normal pace. No one thanks you out loud. No one needs to. Damascus doesn't do applause for basic stewardship. It just absorbs what's fixed and keeps living. And oddly, that's the most comforting part. The city doesn't make you the center of anything. It simply lets you contribute, then invites you back into the current. As the bundle is prepared for handoff, cloth tightened, contents secured, you notice the forge master's movements become marginally gentler, as if the day's small threat has reminded everyone that fragility lives in tiny places. A pin missing, a channel blocked, a blade quenched too soon. Everything breaks at the seams, and everything is held together by attention. The messenger takes the bundle when it's ready, tucking it close in that same careful way you carried it back. Route restored, time reclaimed. The workshop returns fully to its steady loop. Heat, strike, temper, cool. Bellows sigh. Hammers ring. Water waits patiently to do its quiet part. You remain for a moment, letting the sound wash over you like a controlled river. The jasmine thread finds you again, faint, stubborn, carried in from somewhere beyond the soot-dark walls. A reminder, as always, that softness and industry coexist here without needing to argue. You leave the forge district with soot in the fine lines of your hands and a new respect for small parts that keep whole worlds from slipping apart. The day begins to tilt, not suddenly, but with that slow, merciful shift where light stops feeling like a weight and starts feeling like a blanket being folded. The market's current thins. The harsh edges of noon soften. Even the stones seem to cool by degrees, exhaling heat they've been hoarding all day like a bad habit. You don't have to decide where to go. Damascus has already shown you how it guides, by scent, by shade, by the quiet magnetism of water. Your feet find narrower lanes again, lanes that bend to protect you from glare, lanes that hold cooler air like a secret. As you pass doorways and worn steps, you notice the city's evening posture, less hurried, more inward. People move with the calm focus of those who've been working since dawn and are now transitioning into the softer maintenance of the self. And yes, you recognize the doorway before you fully recognize it. The same plain wooden entrance. The same unassuming frame that hides softness behind it. You step through like you're returning to a place you didn't know you needed until it existed in your day. The courtyard receives you the way water receives a thirsty hand, without judgment, with immediate relief. Cool air settles around your ankles first, then climbs slowly as your body adjusts. The fountain is still there, still murmuring, still doing the quiet labor of making the world gentler. Its surface catches the last sharpness of daylight and turns it into ripples on the surrounding walls. Light made liquid, liquid made light, the same old Damascus trick. Jasmine is thicker now. Not louder, just more present, like it has spent all day collecting itself and is now releasing the full perfume. Vines spill over ledges and trellises, blossoms clustered in soft abundance. The scent doesn't ask you to analyze it. It simply wraps around your mind and unthreads the knots you didn't realize you'd tied. Lanterns begin to appear, one by one, as if someone is placing small warm moons into corners. Their glow is softer than firelight in the forge. No fierce center, no sparks, just steady warmth held in glass. Shadows deepen into a rich, calm darkness around the edges of the courtyard, while the center remains a gentle pool of light. The carved latticework above filters what remains of the day into patterned fragments, and you watch the grid land across tiles, across leaves, across your own hands. Your hands look different in this light. Soot becomes less harsh, more like a faint shadow of effort. The same hands that brushed a courtyard wall earlier, that held river water, that steadied reed matting at a maintenance hatch, now rest at your sides with no immediate task. It's strangely difficult for you at first. You're used to having a role. You're used to being useful. Damascus, unbothered, offers you a role you rarely accept, guest. A low table sits near the fountain, not grand, not staged, simply present, as if it has always been part of the courtyard's breath. Bread rests there, round and plain, the kind that feels warm not just in temperature but in meaning. A small bowl of olives. A dish of something sweet that glints slightly, sticky with honey. Water in a clay jug, cool enough that the outside sweats. You feel your body respond before your thoughts can debate it. Yes, food. Yes, rest. Yes, stop pretending you're too busy to be human. You sit where the tiles are cool under you, where the fountain's murmur can keep your mind from sprinting away. You eat slowly, because the courtyard encourages slowness and because chewing is one of those deeply underappreciated ways of convincing your nervous system that you're not in danger. The bread is simple. It tastes like grain and heat and hands. The olives taste like sun held in bitterness. The honey sweetness is the soft ending to the sharpness. The way tempering is the soft ending to the quench. You notice how the fountain's sound overlaps with distant city noise now. From beyond the courtyard walls, there's a faint hum, far-off footsteps, a cartwheel, perhaps the last late hammer strike fading into evening. But here, the courtyard buffers it all. The world can exist without entering your chest. You remember how earlier you envied a leaf spinning lazily in water, going nowhere urgent. Now, sitting here, you feel closer to that leaf than you have in a long time. Not because your life has magically simplified, but because your body has finally been allowed to stop bracing. A small breeze moves through the courtyard, and jasmine blossoms sway gently, releasing another wave of scent. Lantern flames flicker in response, tiny sways of light that feel like breathing. The tiled patterns under your gaze seem more vivid now, repetition that calms rather than confines. Your mind, which loves to chase novelty, finally gets what it needs from repetition. Reassurance. Your thoughts drift back over the day in soft loops. The orchard's channels splitting like braided hair. The market's corridors flowing like a river of people. The forge's controlled fire, and the blade's watery pattern rising into view. The missing bundle, the blocked hidden channel, the small metal pin that nearly turned an orchard row thirsty. It all sounds like a lot when you list it, which is why you don't list it. You let it float through you as impressions, coolness, heat, shade, shimmer, steady hands, small fixes. And you can't help a tiny, sleepy smirk at yourself, because you arrived with that familiar tension, that stubborn clench, and Damascus basically said, in its own way, you probably won't survive this if you insist on staying rigid. Not as a threat. As a gentle fact. The city doesn't crush you. It simply outlasts your tightness until you get tired of holding it. The lantern light grows warmer as the sky outside deepens. The courtyard becomes a contained night, a private universe with its own soft rules. You take a sip of cool water and feel it move through you like a tiny internal river. You think of the Barada again, still flowing beyond walls, still feeding orchards, still sending its influence into courtyards and quenched troughs. Water everywhere, in different forms, doing different kinds of saving. A quiet gratitude settles in, not directed at a person you have to name, not spoken aloud, just present. Gratitude for people who maintain things. For hands that check gates. For apprentices who learn patience. For courtyards built to keep the world from burning you up. Gratitude, too, for the simple possibility that your own inner system can be maintained with the same steadiness. Small adjustments, repeated care, no drama required. You sit a little longer, letting your eyelids grow heavier, letting the fountain's murmur become a kind of lullaby that doesn't demand anything from you. Lantern light paints the tiles. Jasmine keeps breathing. And the city, ancient and unshowy, keeps holding you in its cool palm as night settles in. Lantern light keeps pulling on the tiles, and the fountain keeps repeating itself in that calm loop, like it's determined to outlast every anxious thought you ever had. You sit longer than you planned, because your plans have been gently ignored all day, and honestly, you're starting to like the feeling. At some point the courtyard shifts from evening into night, not as a hard line, but as a soft thickening. The sky above the open square turns darker and deeper, and the stars arrive the way jasmine does here, quietly, persistently, refusing to be rushed. The air cools again. Leaves go still. Even your thoughts become less sharp-edged, more like rounded stones at a riverbed. You stand when your body is ready, not when your brain decides you should. Your knees complain a little in that dry, theatrical way knees love, like they're unionizing mid-sentence. But once you straighten, the coolness feels good. The soot on your hands has faded into the background. It's still there, sure, a faint shadow of effort, but it no longer feels like a stain. It feels like proof that you were awake inside your own day. You move toward the doorway with the slow care of someone leaving a place that softened them. The courtyard doesn't cling. It never begged you to stay. It simply offered you a pocket of gentle rules, and now it releases you back into the larger city. Outside, Damascus is quieter. Not asleep, just turned inward. Streets hold less traffic, more hush. A few oil lamps dot corners like small warm thoughts. The air carries mixed scents now, smoke that has settled into stone, jasmine drifting from unseen vines, and that faint mineral note that always seems to hover near old walls, like history breathing through pores. You find yourself heading back toward the Forge district almost without deciding. Not because you crave heat again, but because your day's loop feels incomplete. You've learned the city is a system of returns. Water leaves the river and comes back. Heat leaves the hearth and comes back. People leave courtyards and return to them. Your steps echo lightly in the narrow lanes, softened by night. Shadows stretch longer, turning corners into gentle mysteries. When you reach the steel district, it isn't roaring the way it did at noon. The workshops are dimmer now, their fires banked lower, their smoke thinner. The hammer rhythm is rarer, occasional taps, like punctuation, as if some work insists on being finished before sleep. Bellows sigh less frequently. The district feels like an animal settling down, still warm, still alive, but easing its muscles. You pause at the workshop entrance you've already memorized with your body. The doorway looks ordinary, because that's how this city hides its most important things. Inside, low fireglow paints everything in muted orange. Tools hang in their places. The anvil sits like an old truth. A shallow basin reflects a sliver of flame. An apprentice moves in the half-light, sweeping ash into a neat pile with slow strokes. Their posture is tired but steady, and the steadiness is the real luxury here. Another figure stands near a bench, older hands, calm stance. The kind of presence that doesn't need to dominate a room to be felt. You don't get an announcement. You get a glance that lands on your submarked fingers, then lifts to your face, as if checking that you're still intact. You stand there quietly, letting the workshop decide what to do with your presence. This is not a place where gratitude arrives in speeches. It arrives in gestures, in a bowl placed closer, in a path cleared, in someone making space without making a show. The older hands reach to a small wrapped cloth on the bench, not the damp bundle from earlier, but another, cleaner fold, then unwrap something small and dark that catches the firelight in a restrained shimmer. It's not a blade, not a sword, not a dramatic object meant to make you feel powerful. You look at it and immediately understand the mercy of that, because you can barely manage your own nervous system on a good day. The last thing you need is a weapon in your emotional inventory. It's a narrow strip of patterned steel, polished and cool-looking even in warm light, about the length of your palm and as thin as a finger. One edge is rounded, safe. The surface holds faint watery lines, those same ripples you saw rise under careful treatment earlier, like the burrata left its signature inside metal. The pattern isn't screaming for attention. It's quiet, intimate, and somehow more moving because of it. The strip is placed into your hands with a simple finality. The weight surprises you, not heavy like a stone, but dense in a way that feels concentrated, as if the entire day has been folded into this one small object. Fire, water, patience, repetition. The city's whole argument about endurance, condensed. Your fingers curl around it, and you feel the coolness settle into your palm. For a moment you just stand there, breathing, feeling the contrast. Your skin still holds a trace of forged warmth, and the steel holds the memory of controlled cool. Tempered, balanced, not brittle, not soft. Just right. A small leather thong is offered next, plain, practical, and you watch as the strip is threaded through a tiny hole at one end, turning it into something you can wear, not to show off, but to remember. A token. A quiet anchor. Something that doesn't demand you tell the story, but will make you feel it again when your fingers find its edge in your pocket. You realize what it is, truly, not a gift of ownership, but a gift of pattern. A reminder that flow can be restored, that heat can be managed, that small parts matter. A reminder of the blocked channel and the pin pulled free, of the orchard row eased back into its share, of the way a city survives by doing the unglamorous maintenance over and over. You think briefly of the silly parts of your day too, because your brain can't resist being a little petty even while feeling moved. The moment you envied that leaf spinning lazily in the courtyard fountain like it had no responsibilities. The way your body tried to stay clenched, and the city basically waited you out. The fact that you entered Damascus thinking you were in charge of your own mood, and Damascus quietly proved otherwise. You probably won't survive this, you remember, if you insist on staying tense. And you feel a soft, private smile at how true that turned out to be. You hold the steel strip up toward the low firelight, and the watery lines shimmer faintly, shifting as you tilt it, never the same from one angle to the next. Like water, like silk, like the market's moving current, like the way your life looks different depending on how you hold your attention. When you finally lower it and tuck it close, you feel the day becoming portable. Not in a forced, lesson learned way, but in a quiet physical way, something cool against your chest, something steady against your ribs. A small piece of Damascus that isn't trying to turn you into a different person. It's just reminding you that you can be maintained, that you can be tempered, that you can be returned to flow. And with that weight, more memory than object, you step back into the night lanes, already feeling the city's gate and the river's mist waiting somewhere ahead, patient as ever. You step into the lanes with the steel strip resting against you like a cool, quiet pulse. Night has thinned into that in-between hour when Damascus feels suspended, either fully awake nor fully asleep, just breathing slowly, letting stone release its stored heat, while jasmine insists on softness anyway. The streets still bend as if they're protecting you from straight lines. A few oil lamps burn low, rounding doorways and worn steps into gentle shapes. Somewhere behind a wall, a fountain keeps murmuring, and the sound slides through the dark like a reminder. Flow is possible, even when you can't see the source. You walk with less effort now. Not because you've magically become serene. Relax, that kind of overnight upgrade is suspicious. But because your body has finally accepted the city's pace. You're not fighting the current anymore. You're letting it carry you. A faint breeze threads through the lane, and you taste dampness on it. River air. Your steps follow that hint naturally. Stone underfoot grows cooler. The soundscape changes. Fewer workshop taps, more quiet footfalls, a shudder settling, the distant wing beat of a bird that has decided dawn is a reasonable time to judge everyone. The city loosens as you approach its edge. Walls thin. The sky opens wider overhead. And then, almost gently, you find the river again. The Barada moves in the half-light with the same unbothered confidence it had when you arrived. Mist hovers low over the banks, softening reeds into silhouettes. On the surface, faint reflections of lamps still burning inside the walls tremble, break, and reform with every ripple. You stand there and let your breath match it. In, out. The river doesn't speed up to impress you. It doesn't slow down to comfort you. It just keeps going, steady as a hand on your shoulder. Behind you, Damascus holds itself in layers. Cool courtyards tucked behind plain doors, markets that will soon wake and braid into motion, forges that will breathe fire carefully once the day asks for it. Jasmine reaches you even here, carried by air that has brushed some vine in a hidden corner. Smoke reaches you too, faint and clean, yesterday's work settling into stone. Water and fire, scent and soot, all living side by side without needing a meeting about it. Your fingers find the steel strip without thinking. You rub the rounded edge with your thumb and feel its cool density, the watery lines shifting when you tilt it toward the paling sky. The pattern looks different in dawn light, softer, more private, like a memory rather than a trophy. You remember how the pattern only rose when the surface was treated with care, and the city's lesson settles again. Attention reveals what rushing hides. A bird calls from the orchard side, and your mind returns to the hidden hatch by the channel. Wet reeds. Cloth dragged through silt. That ridiculous little pin lodged crosswise, turning a clean vein into a strained gurgle. You remember how quickly the system began to suffer. One row of trees thirstier, one bank too soft with seepage, and how quickly it steadied when hands did the unglamorous fix. Pull, clear, replace, restore. Damascus doesn't survive because it never breaks. It survives because people notice early, act quietly, and keep showing up. Hands on gates, hands on tongs, hands on small problems before they become loud. You realize, with a sleepy kind of clarity, that your own inner system isn't so different. A small blockage can make everything feel tight. A day run too hot can make you brittle. The remedy is rarely dramatic. It's usually maintenance, water, food, sleep, shade, slower breathing, fewer sharp thoughts. Not a reinvention, just a gentle return to flow, the way a channel returns to its bed when the obstruction is lifted. You almost laugh at yourself, quietly, because you came here thinking you could stay clenched and still call it rest. The city waited you out. Remember that leaf in the courtyard fountain, spinning like it had no responsibilities? You don't envy it as sharply now. You've learned something better than envy: permission. Permission to be still without turning it into a performance. The sky lightens toward pearl. The first edge of sun touches the tops of distant walls and turns them briefly gold. Mist lifts in thin ribbons. The river's surface shifts from shadow to pale blue, then soft silver, as if it's waking without any rush. Behind you, the city stirs, subtle, practical, a door opening somewhere, a step, the clink of a vessel being set down. You begin to walk along the river path, and the gate comes into view the way a decision comes into view, quietly, inevitably. You pause there, because leaving deserves one last look. Inside the walls, jasmine will keep climbing. Courtyards will keep holding coolness for tired bodies. Waterkeepers will keep checking gates. Forge fires will glow and be coaxed, not forced, into shape. The city will keep doing what it does, repeating small acts of care until endurance becomes ordinary. You let the image settle, then you step forward. The steel strip rests against your chest like a small calm reminder. Flow can return, heat can be tempered, patterns can rise when you treat your surface with care. And as dawn grows brighter over the Barada, you walk on, carrying Damascus the way you carried that bundle, close, steady, and finally, gently. The river keeps moving beside you, and you let its steadiness borrow the edges of your thoughts, smoothing them the way water smooths a stone, one patient touch at a time. Your steps grow quieter, as if morning is asking you to loosen your grip on everything you've been holding too tightly. You feel the cool steel resting against your chest, not heavy, not demanding, just present, like a small promise you can carry without effort. If you listen closely, you can hear the day you lived inside these walls, the fountain's low murmur, the hush of jasmine leaves, the clean ring of a hammer, the gentle rush of a channel returning to its bed after you cleared the blockage. And now you don't have to do anything with those memories. You don't have to organize them. You don't have to turn them into a lesson, or a plan, or a checklist you'll forget by lunchtime. You can simply let them drift behind your eyes, soft and safe, the way mist drifts above the Barada before the sun claims the sky. Breathe in, slow and deep, as if you're drawing in cool courtyard air. Breathe out, longer, as if you're letting out the last heat of the forge without losing its warmth. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands rest, even if only for this moment. Imagine the city behind you still calm, still working, still kind in its quiet way, courtyards holding shade, orchards holding green, waterkeepers checking gates, jasmine climbing without hurry. The lights inside windows grow dimmer in your mind, the sounds soften, the edges blur, and everything becomes gentle. Stay here in that gentleness, a little longer, until your thoughts slow to the river's pace, and your breathing becomes the only story you need. End of story. Sweet dreams.